All right, we're all good to go.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my desktop. Good. Okay. And now my slides seem to have disappeared. Okay, while I get that running again, let me see if I can do something. Sorry, as soon as I switch to that, it's failing. Can everyone see the slides now? Can anyone see the slides now?
They seem to be blank.
Okay.
Do you want me to try to see if sorry?
Yeah, they seem to have disappeared as you've given me the presenting. They've just gone completely blank on me.
Okay, let's see. Maybe I have the slides, so maybe they'll show up on my screen, and you can just tell me when to
yeah, that's
when
that's
to go. Okay.
Okay, so while Tracy's doing that, I wanted to just sort of give a caveat about what I was going to talk about. So I'm presuming that most of the folks on the call are relatively new users or haven't used R, and obviously in terms of the Ideas Forum and also some of the other discussion groups on Tableau, there's been quite a lot of interest for using R and Tableau together. We at the moment use it in what we can do given the constraints that we've got without any integration. I wanted to talk about that really the emphasis today, because I felt it was most useful to talk about things you can do now rather than things that hypothetically you could do depending on which way Tableau goes. So the presentation is all about what is possible now. Tracy, let me know when you've got it in front of you.
Can you see it? I thought I shared it, but let me know if you can't.
I can't see it.
You can't.
Okay, I've got it. Yeah,
okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Let me know when you want me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, these are the sort of things I'm going to go over today. So, what is R? You've probably heard an awful lot about it. Why you might want to use it with Tableau as of today, as I said. I'm going to go through a really simple example, which is a sort of live example of what we're using it for at the moment. I'm then going to give you a very few small footnotes in terms of resources. The web is completely overloaded with R resources. It's got a massive community, so Google is certainly your friend in here, and I think places like Stack Overflow, which I haven't mentioned, are very good places, and there's some good books out there as well. And then I'm just going to give my own personal view on the things that have been going on things like the Ideas Forum, where I've been quite vocal in saying, this is why I'd like R, and this is how I'd like integration, and this is how I'd like it to look. So that's the general overview. Tracy, do you want to just advise? You can use your left and right. Okay. So what I'm not going to cover is things of how to get you up and started. Things like installing R, loading data types and the data parts, and also I'm not going to cover statistics, which is what a lot of us are using R for. I didn't want to end up having a conversation about different statistical techniques. This is very much about what is R there. And again, anything you want to look at there, I say Google's probably the best friend there. Tracy, do you want to advance? Okay, so what is it? R is an open source programming language. I believe it's about 20 years old. It's based on a programming language called S, which was developed, I believe, by Bell Labs It's now owned by Tableau, who do Spotfire, and ours really an open source implementation of S. It's completely multi-platform, so you can be running it like we do on a Mac. You can be running it on a Windows machine. There's Linux implementations. Some folks have got it running on Raspberry Pis. I mean, you can run it on a web server. It's completely open, completely able to be one of those. R comes as a base package, a base implementation, a bit like SPSS, if anyone's familiar with that. And then there's additional packages that add on functionality for that. And as of yesterday, when I was putting these slides together, there were 4,442 additional packages. It's grown at a tremendous rate at the moment. There's probably about 1,000 new packages come along every year. And one of the key reasons for that is that we've got to a stage, especially in statistical methodology and approaches, where people will be writing about a new approach they're using for statistics in an academic journal, and they'll implement they'll put together an R package so people can go and play with it and see what it is. And this has led to real explosion of R packages. I think it's safe to say that I have yet to find a technique that I'm wanting to implement which somebody hasn't already pre-programmed for me in a package. Sometimes the CRAN is sort of the official way of getting packages, and there's some others that are in implementation or in development. But usually within 20 minutes you can find what you're looking for and find somebody who's put it in place. And they're really extensive what you can do. This presentation was written in R and created as an HTML5 presentation, and there's a package that's coming out at the moment called Sliderify, which enables you to do that. And as I said at the beginning, it's really great community support. Stack Overflow is probably my favorite place of getting answers there, and some really good folk are answering. So, I mean, usually, it obviously it's not as good as Tableau forum groups, Tracy, but there's a lot of resources out there if you can't find official documentation. Do you want to advance on to the next slide? Okay, so why are we using R and Tableau together? Well, Tableau is really happy, and you can do an awful lot with it as long as your data is coming in the right sort of shape that you want that you need it in to be able to visualize in the way that you're wanting to do. And I'm working in the HR world, and the data that I'm having to deal with on a day-to-day basis is almost never in the right shape. Some of it's just plain messy. Some of it doesn't use a row for an instance. So we're doing an awful lot of times where we're having to sort of find new ways of taking a data set and changing it into a form that Tableau's happy. And what I'm going to do for the demonstration is really focus on that, because that's a key part of what we're doing. And the second part that I'm using increasingly is to add to new tables and utilize Tableau's great data blending. So we'll create tables with additional data in that might not have been in the original data source, and blend them together using Tableau to really extend Tableau's usefulness. And I think here, often arguably you could get away with doing a lot of it in table calculations or within sort of smart use of raw SQL. But I'm coming to a part where I'm just finding in a lot of instances it's just easier to get the data in the right format outside R and then bringing it in as a simple data blend. So I'll give you a quick example of the sort of things we're using to do that. Do you want to take the next slide? So a typical example for us is survey data. We run loads and loads of surveys. We do employee engagement surveys, which can have 80,000, 90,000 respondents. And if you're looking at the data coming out of a survey tool, what usually is formatted is that each individual question is a column. And sorry, Parallels has just cut down on me. So each individual table is a column. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Windows has decided now would be a great time to shut down, so I might go. Okay, I'll try and get it on as quickly as possible. Am I still here for everyone?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry, Parallels decided that was a good time to reinstall Windows, which I was using to log into the conference. So, the survey data comes as each question has a different column. We try and keep the number of questions down to a reasonable number, but I've seen surveys recently which had 150 questions, and therefore you're dealing with a data set which is just not in the right format to be able to use within Tableau very easily. And I know Tableau used to, and may still do, have an Excel sheet that enables you to reformat data into the same way, into the way that's good for Tableau. What we're now doing is using that in R. Also, we might want to do some calculations before we put it into Tableau, not because you can't do it in Tableau, but because it's just an awful lot easier to get it sorted in the data set before loading it in. Do you want to take it on to the next slide, Tracy? Have you got? I haven't got the slide, the web demo in front of me. Is it now showing how to do it in R?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, what I've just described, reformatting the data, is quite easy, and in fact, if I just wanted to do that, the last line of this would do that job just for me. What I like to do, though, when I'm doing this, is just generally split out the data that's coming from the survey tool into a table with the question data, which will be an ID number for the respondent, and a question and an answer, and then putting all the category information, such as information about the respondents, in another table, which I'll blend in Tableau. I could do it equally in R, but I just find it easier for my way of working to do it in Tableau. So if I just quickly walk you through, there's a package. I said there was about the packages. There's a package called Reshape2, which just reshapes data, and it's super easy and super flexible to do. On the first couple of lines, I take a data set which I've called original data, and I subset it. So I take a subset and call it questions, which has got using the columns 1 to 90, and then I have a second set table I create called categories, which I use the column 1, which is the ID field, and then some category data, which was 92 and 95 in this instances. I then are using a couple of rows to add columns. I want to find, when I'm doing surveys, we generally want to do analysis on folks who went through and did all of them rather than the folks who abandoned. Certainly, we would want to identify, when we're doing our reporting in Tableau, which are the abandons and which aren't. And the next two lines, the complete section is creating a variable called complete, which is just saying which of these data lines has complete cases, i.e. they've answered every single line question, and then I just add that onto the categories. So we therefore have a true false marker whether somebody's got to the end of the survey or not. We then, because the survey tool shows the column header as the actual question, and it could be 250, 300 characters long, we just label the questions, question 1 to, in this instance, 89, and that's what that row is doing. and then we replace the original table headers, which was the actual questions, with a number 1 to 80 question with something called Q, and then 1 to 89. And again, we've created a lookup table. We can blend that in Tableau, and then this is the final part, which creates it from a very wide data set with 89 rows to a data set which has a ID number, a variable name, which was the question, and a line called question, which then will have like Q1, Q2, and then the response, which for many surveys is a Likert score, typically a 1 to 5 with a 6 as a don't know. So I can then save that as a table, either back as a CSV or write it back into my database, and I can join it from Tableau. So this small thing, it enables me to reformat data into the way of the Tableau wants it, and it just shows a simple use case of how we're using that. Do you want to take it to the next slide, Tracy?
Yep, we're on the advantages of this approach.
Okay, sorry, I forgot that I'm not looking at the same thing. So why do we do it in all the data formatting in R? Well, the script that I talked about in the last slide is just that. It's a script. So you write it once. Every time you get a fresh set of data, you can rerun that script, and if necessary, I could head it with a load data in command, and then tail it with a save data back into the database or spreadsheet. So we can automate that so that it automatically, when it's getting new data in, reformats the data into the format that it's needed for Tableau. I can also create user functions, and a lot of this is the way that we typically work within R, and that I'll create those few lines. It's given I've created a function called Tableau Ready, which is a function which takes the original data, a variable called how many columns, or what are the columns of the questions, and what are the columns of the category. I put the code where hash in R is it's a comment field. I put the code there and then return the data, and then just being able to do that, I could now use this function on any size survey. So however many questions, I would just be able to call this function Tableau Ready, give it the 3 different variables, and we would then have it would return the data in exactly the format that Tableau would want it in. So it means it's very reproducible and it's very simple to do. And I find that the joy of R is you often need to just crack the problem once, and then it will be able to do lots of this sort of hard sort of reformatting stuff on an ongoing basis. Before using Tableau for this, I was using Google Refine and what's now Open Refine, and I just find an awful lot easier to do that. Do you want to take it on to the next slide? Okay, I'm trusting you're now making Tableau do new stuff.
Yes,
so,
we are.
The other great thing that we're really starting to find the boundaries of is that my way of working for data visualization is generally to start with pen and paper and sort of sketch out what I want to create, and then to use Tableau to create it. And one of the great points about Tableau is that you can just give it an X and Y coordinate, and you frankly can plot almost anything. So the difficulty for me and some of the stuff I wanted to do is working out what those X and Y coordinates should be. And R has a lot of built-in functions that enable you to do this. So the image I've got is a screenshot from Tableau 8, where we're creating organization charts that we can use on dashboards, using R to create the X and Y coordinates for each of the points, and then blending this in as an additional table. So we have an ID for individuals, we create an X and Y coordinates, and therefore we can plot organization charts using Tableau, and use Tableau's ability to do things like color or size the boxes based on underlying factors. So I could, for example, color on gender or performance ratings, or I could size these boxes, I think has been happened here, in terms of salary. So it radically increases the amount of functionality you can do if you can work out the X and Y coordinates. We were doing really simple stuff, very similar to the hot topic of bubble charts in Tableau, by working out the positions of the bubbles in advance of Tableau 8. So it broadens the remit quite considerably, being able to work out that. And again, the layout algorithm for doing these org charts was just a standard function in a package called iGraph, which is a network layout package. Let's just take it to the final slide, Tracy, and then I think we'll go on to conversations. Okay, so the last part was resources, and you're going to get these. We'll share these slides afterwards. If you want to download it, you can go to our project. As I said, it's available in all functions. Version 3, and this is a 20-year-old piece of software. Version 3 came out last week. I haven't installed it, but it gives it a lot more capability and really large data sets. R works on the command line, and I think a lot of the problems that people have with R is that it's just not very friendly to work everything on the command line. R Studio is a development environment for using R, and it gives you an awful lot of functionality and makes it an awful lot easier to write routines in R. And there's a couple of graphical user interfaces that folks have developed for R, and Deducer is one that's very SPSS-like. But if you just don't want to do any code, go to the Deducer, and the GUI will then go off and create the code for you. It has a really nice implementation. There's a package called ggplot2, which is very good for doing some quite interesting static data vises, and Deducer's got a really nice interface for doing ggplot2. I have to say it's not as easy to do that as it is for using it on Tableau, but if you were producing a graphic that you wanted to get absolutely pixel perfect for print, it's probably a better. I believe that ggplot2 is what The Economist uses for its graphics. So that's a very, very simple overview. I'd love to hear, I'll try and answer any questions, but it'd be interesting to hear people's reactions to what I've done. The one last thing I wanted to mention is why, if we can do lots of stuff here without any implementation within R, why quite a few of us want to have integration in there. And what you can't do at the moment, or I haven't worked out a way of doing, is to be able to take the interactions of the user that Tableau's so good at working with, and then putting that into R and reformat. So, for example, on the last slide, I talked about using R to create X, Y's using various different layout algorithms. I can only do that in advance of loading it into R, and the only times I can do interactions are if I can predict all the possible interactions that a user could make, and run multiple XY coordinates based on what those interactions would be. And those interactions generally taken by a parameter. So I could create a table with if parameter equals 5, then these are the XY coordinates. If parameter equals 6, then these are a different set of X coordinates. But there's a lot of different routines that we can't currently do very easily without creating massive all available options to use interactions, and I think that's why quite a few of us would like to use R within Tableau. That's all I had to say. I'd be really interested to hear from the floor.
So I just took everyone off mute, so if you just want to go ahead and ask your question. It looks like Michael Christiani has one. Is there an ODBC driver to connect directly to our data set?
There are drivers for most of the databases, either sort of standard ones or database-specific drivers. We tend to be using MySQL a lot, and there's definitely drivers for that. But I would imagine there are for almost everyone's. A lot of the other tool manufacturers and analytic database manufacturers have started implementing integrations with R. So even people like SAS and SPSS have got integration now with R because there's just so many new statistical techniques that are being implemented first in R, and they obviously want to keep people on their platform. So for those instances, they're giving integration. And folks like Oracle are using Oracle, I believe IBM are using our integration quite a lot within their database. So again, Google's your friend on that, but I suspect you'll find a way of getting data from any different data sets. I'm not sure if anybody's used the drivers that have just been launched as in Tableau 8 to load those directly into R. But with the way the packages are going, I think it's only a matter of time before somebody develops an R package to use the TDE files. Does anyone else have any questions, comments?
Yeah, maybe I have a question. I think the best would be, the quickest way just to integrate a Tableau with R workspaces is to write a little ODBC driver for the R workspaces itself. Like from Tableau, with the generic ODBC connection, you can connect to your R workspaces and read the tables directly from there through a live connection. And with this, you can work real time with your stuff, and you don't even have to customize the Tableau a lot. And to write an ODBC driver is about 2 weeks. So it can be one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me the question has always been the interaction with R and what the user does. R, depending on what you want to do, R either takes a long time to get it done or does it in a blink of an eye. But you tend to know that some of the sort of sophisticated simulations we do might run for a long time, and you wouldn't want to be waiting on an interaction because you would then slow down the whole user experience. But simple things such as what value if they set a parameter to, I haven't yet worked out a way of getting that into R. And a lot of the things that we do with R at the moment. Another example is we run simulations for queuing. We use something called discrete event simulations. So I have a client who does a very big recruitment centers, and we wanted to say, well, how quickly would this volume of applications be finished, would be processed if we put 7 people on the case rather than 5 people on the case, and we'll do that with a simulation. I would love to be able to put a parameter on a dashboard where the user can change the value of number of people on the case, but at the moment I can't do that without creating in advance simulations for every single possible value, and then we obviously can constrain the possible values of the parameters to a reasonable amount that people aren't going to find too constraining, and then create a simulation for every single one of those. But yeah, it's the interaction from the user, which is the part that I've always struggled to work out how we could find a workaround. But I'm not an expert on Tableau by any means.
So are there any other people on the line who have used R integration with Tableau that they'd like to share their experience maybe? No. Okay.
I think there's a guy called Mark Bulling who he and I presented at a UK Tableau user group a few years ago on. And I think he's now at Facebook, and he has a blog where he talks about quite a lot of our work, and obviously Tableau. And I think Mark's probably a lot better at R than I am, and I keep bumping into him sort of when I'm looking at things like Stack Overflow. It'll often be a comment from Mark that comes up with an answer to a solution. I suspect because he's looking at similar sort of data problems in a similar sort of way as I am. So there are a good bunch of people, I think, who are using R and are using Tableau, and I suspect a lot of those are more advanced in both of those tools than I am. But I think the joy is, if you have a problem with your data, then it's just worth having a look at what you can do with R, because it's often a lot easier that way than certainly using other tools. I talk about using my experience with things like Google Refine, which is very good for CSV files, but I think Google Refine was easier to use. Just open a data set and know what I want to do with it, but in the long term, it's a lot easier to sort out the problem in R and then do it that way. So there's a lot you can do with it at the moment, but as I say, there'd be an awful lot more you could do if there was integration.
Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah, this is Mike Christiani again. So I guess I'm trying to find out. I guess I haven't heard you talk about it. You showed some code there, but when it gets down to taking the results of the work you're doing in R into Tableau, you're just you're using some sort of flat file export out of R, right? You're not connecting directly.
We do connect to databases. The type of data I get doesn't change very often. Often we're saying to folks, give us an extract as a CSV, and then we'll work at that process. Just because we're working generally external to their network, and it's just an awful lot easier doing it that way. But there are drivers onto all of the databases. I've got experience of using it within MySQL, and as I say, there's just a simple command saying load this table up and read from this table. R uses several different data formats, but I think the one that most of us would be most familiar would be what it calls a data frame, which is very, very like a database table, and you can just read a database table and create it into a data frame where you do the work as a data frame and then load it back up into the database.
Okay.
and I haven't got experience with it, mainly because of the way that the data I'm dealing with comes at me. But you can certainly automate this so that if there was a data refresh, you could get a server to run a script from R automatically, and take it out of the database at a certain time every night, for example, do the formatting, statistical work, and load it back up into the database without any intervention.
And another question: did you try something like a PLR? I mean, a stored procedure from the database in R language, because many database engines like Postgres, Greenplum supports R inside the database engine, and then you can address it with a custom SQL from Tableau, give some parameters to your R code, execute it, and give back, and just back the results. I think that could be
I haven't.
option.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting option. I haven't honestly tried it. I'm very much the analyst, and when it comes to tricky technical questions, I have a technical team who can help me do that. But as I said, a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment, we'll get, for example, from a survey tool, we might get 80,000 rows, but we'll upload it as a CSV file, and those 80,000 rows then, with that type of script that I showed, may turn it into another CSV file with 4 million rows if it's got 50 questions, and a lot of our work ends up being CSV files, and then I'll tend to bring it into R natively rather than connecting. But as I say, we've got some experience of it within MySQL, and it's an area where I know it's got a lot of capability and a lot of people use it, but I haven't personally got a huge amount of expertise on that.
And my last question, and then I just leave you alone. But have you seen how this R integration done in Spotfire? Because as far as I know, then Spotfire is the leader in the S and R integration. So how they are doing?
The honest answer is I don't know, because I haven't played around with Spotfire for a long time. Certainly before that, they're obviously, because Typico are now own S, they obviously were very keen on getting that in. A lot of organisations I've seen are doing it through functions, and I think there's a video on the Spotfire site about how they do it with S and also R. I mean, R is just an open source implementation of S with a few very minor tweaks. But I wrote on the ideas side of Tableau communities around creating new user-generated functions, and I think for me that would be the nicest way of doing it. Whereas just like we create table calculations at the moment, we could create our own functions in R. I suspect it would work similar to how you'd use raw SQL and those type of things, and then just and then call out to something you've written in R already. Within a large organization, I think that has a lot of advantages in that you could empower the users who probably aren't experts to use calculations which somebody centrally who wants to control those control the quality of those calculations defines, and in some ways you'd probably end up finding that people would define functions that were very similar to what you could do in table calculations, but it might just be easier to have a preset a preset function, you might just say, this is my calculation for this particular business metric that we use, and then we just use that as a function like you would do as a table calculation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, if there aren't any more comments or questions, thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing this with us. This was awesome.
It's a pleasure, and I'll stick those slides up, and I'll make a change so I've got my email address if anyone wants to find me a question. I have to say I'm not an R expert, nor am I a Tableau expert in a lot of this company. So I've probably been using R and Tableau for 2-3 years, and both tools always fascinate me how much more that you can push them and how much more they're capable of doing. So I think both are tools that we constantly learn from, and that's certainly my experience with both.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always something new to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tracy, thank you very much for organizing.
Of course, and thank you again for sharing with us. I know there's lots of people who are interested in this. People internally at Tableau have been like, make sure you record it so that they can see it. So.
Well, of course, anybody in Tableau wants to give me a shout and ask for. I'm more than happy lobbying for the way I'd like to use the integration.
Awesome. I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if someone reaches out to you.
Good. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope it was enjoyable.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.